This is Doug at Rusted Wrench Garage. As you can see, I'm not working on the car. Waiting, I've got the roll cage all tacked in. We're waiting to get that welded in, and we can get back to putting the car together. But what I was wanting to talk about today was rear ends. No, not that kind of rear end. I'm talking about car rear ends. You know, when I first started building my car, I had a big issue with the rear ends because, you know, the most common rear ends that I come across anyhow is the Chevy 7.5, the Chevy 8.5, the Ford 8.8, and the Ford 9-inch. So I kind of wanted to talk about rear ends today and kind of get you guys' opinion, see what you think. Well, the first one I want to talk about is the Chevy 7.5. Now I see that in a lot of cars that come in. You know, it was in the third gen Camaros. They used them. The G bodies used them. The S10 pickups used them. And there's probably other cars that they was into, but those are the ones that, you know, I'm kind of familiar with that come to mind. And to me, that's probably one of the weaker rear ends that Chevy made. I mean, for the street, I'm sure they work great. I'm sure they are. I mean, we see them. They're on the street. They work great. But I'm talking about in a drag race situation where you're running slick tires and you're on a sticky track and you're leaving at a high RPM and you get that thing, those tires to stick. What's that rear end going to do? I mean, my opinion that if you leave you leave on a trans brake without the line, then you're going to bring out the track cleanup crew, and they're not going to be happy. But there may be ways to beat that up. I'm sure there probably is. I looked into some, but I wasn't real happy with it. And there may be some of you guys out there that's running that 7.5. I see guys out at the track that's running them, and they seem to be doing all right. Now, I don't know what kind of power they're building. I don't know what kind of RPMs they're really leaving at, you know, or what they've done to the rear end to help beef it up. But if some of you guys are running them and you've found, you know, I'd like to know how heavy of a car you got it in. What's the RPMs you're leaving at? You know, how's that rear end holding up? What have you done to it to keep it to stay together? And there's probably other people out there that will watch this video would like to know that too. So next I want to talk about the Chevy 8.5 rear end. One of the bigger 10-bolt rear end. And you can still get those. They're still around pretty plentiful. Matter of fact, that's what came out stock in my 80 Camaro. And I've had one in a 75 Nova and stuff. So those rear ends are still around. And that's what I run. And I've had real good luck with it. I mean, we run it at the track. As you can see, it raises the front end of the car up. And I've really had no trouble with it. So as far now, I've done stuff to beef it up to try to help make it live longer. I put Moser axles in there. I've put the Moser full spool, the main caps that hold the carrier in, or the spool in my case. I've took those bolts out and I put studs in there. I've got the rear cover with the two bolts that go out and clamp against those caps. Also, I've welded the tubes up on the axle tubes. I've welded them up, and I put C-clip eliminators on it, which I think if you're going to do any kind of drag racing, C-clip eliminators and one of these Chevy rear ends is a must, because you happen to break an axle inside that tube or lose one of them C-clips, it's going to make for one bad ride and one bad day. Could actually get hurt or bend up a quarter panel. But and then I put the strange yoke on the front of it with the bigger, so it would hold the bigger U-joints. And so far, but just doing those things, the it's performed well. I haven't had much trouble with the rear end. Now I have pulled the leaf springs off and put mono leaf springs on there from Calvert, and I got the Calvert. What am I trying to say? Not the traction bars, but well, you know what I'm talking about. So I've done about everything I can think of to beef that rear end up. Now, if you know anything else that'll help beef that up, I'd sure like to know about it. But so far, it's ran good. The car's ran in the low 10s. I've left on slicks on a sticky track at 4,000 RPM. It's pulled, like you've seen, it's pulled the front end up and really have had no trouble out of that rear end. And then next we got the Ford 8.8 rear end. I don't know much about Fords. Haven't messed with them, but the 8.8 seems to be a pretty stout rear end. I know I had one guy tell me that 8.8 was probably as strong as the Chevy 12 Bolt. We could talk about the Chevy 12 Bolt, but here in my area, those things are just really hard to come by. That's probably the biggest, stoutest rear end that Chevy makes that we can put underneath one of these cars. But the 8.8, found it a lot. I see it a lot in these older Fox body Mustangs and the Explorers. They're in a lot of the Explorers, and they're probably in some other cars too. But like I said, I'm not real familiar with Fords. I know at one time I was going to build a Vega, and then I thought about an S10, but they had that weaker 7.5 in there, and I was told that you could take that rear end out of an Explorer, and one axle tube is longer than the other one, and you could take that rear end out and buy another axle out of another Explorer, that like the shorter one with that short axle, cut that tube and shove that in there, and they'd fit underneath the S10s and the Vegas and stuff. But I don't know. I haven't done that. I heard it can be done. So I mean, I think that's probably a pretty stout rear end from what I've seen in my experiences at the racetrack. But then we go to the Ford 9-inch. We really don't have to talk much about that. I mean, almost everybody's running the Ford 9-inch. They're under about every drag car out there. That seems to be the go-to. I mean, I like that idea because it's got that pumpkin, and if you want to make a gear change, you just, slide your axles out, pull that pumpkin out, put you another one in there with the gears already set up, put the axles back in, and you're ready to go. And it's a pretty stout rear end. I've seen it under some pretty high horsepower cars in stock factory form, but I think they was running like 30 or 31 spline axles in them with the big, I call them the big Torino bearing housings on there. They got the bigger housings on the bearings. And eventually we'll probably, more likely, that's the way we'll end up going. But that's when we decide to tub the car and then put the big steamroller tires underneath it. But I know I've getting a lot of comments on the channels about different things, people having their own opinions, and they've really been helpful. And I think people, come in and they see that, and it gives them an idea of the direction they should go. So that was the reason I made the video. I'd like to know, even for my own self, I'd like to know what kind of rear end are you running in your car? How heavy is the car? What RPMs are you leaving at? How much horsepower are you making? What have you done to beef up your rear end? I think that would be helpful to people just to know that, because when I was going through it with the rear end, I just really didn't find a lot of information out there that, that I felt like was, I want to see real world information, what I'm saying. I don't want to see just people say, well, this is my opinion, or this is what somebody else has done. I'd like to hear from people that they're actually out there doing it. They're running the car. They've got that rear end in there. They put their hands on it. They've done the work, and they know what works and what don't work. That's the kind of comments I'm looking for. I'd like to see that. So, I just say, if you're going to go drag racing, know what you got. Know what it's capable of doing, and just go out and have fun. So anyhow, that's Doug with Rusted Wrench Garage. I look forward to reading some of your comments or the advice and stuff that you have. And till the next one, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And thanks for watching.